Chief officers, ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding for Her Worship the Mayor.
Before proceeding with the formal business of the meeting, I would like to invite Rose Ford from St Andrew's Church to read to us. Would all members please remain standing?
Madam Mayor, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be here today and a great honor to be given this speech. I came to Luton in 1981, and I will fiercely defend this town to anyone, as I have had nothing but good experiences and memories of my life here. I remember walking on the street one day and seeing a policeman coming toward me. Now, coming from London, I watched him approach with fear, mistrust, and trepidation. However, as he came alongside me, he smiled and said hello. I had to stop myself from running in the opposite direction. That was a new experience for me as a Londoner, but it set the pattern for my life in Luton. The people here have been very friendly. And we're fortunate to have Councillor Salim as our new mayor. She has a passion for Luton and its people and is a great campaigner for unity and equality. Unity and diversity is very important for our country and for our town. And we know it's very easy to divide people based on their beliefs, cultures, and ideologies, etc. We only have to look at the situation in Palestine and Israel and other places in the world that cannot find peace and unity at this time. We must continue to pray for these people and hope that they can come to an understanding that can see them living in harmony, accepting each other's differences. The people of Luton have found and are still finding ways to bond with one another, allowing us to coexist in peace and harmony. We show unity despite our differences, which helps to maintain local integration, where people can live and work together effectively. The great singer Bob Marley once said, "Humans must appreciate others as humans, not by race or religion." And I couldn't agree more. I think we've found that in Luton because we are taking the time to get to know each other within our communities. We are learning from each other, sharing our experiences with each other and even our faiths. We are stepping outside the box to build greater, friendlier, more inclusive communities. We can show the world how much more we can achieve by working together than fighting against each other. God commands us to love one another. And even though we are diverse in Luton, very diverse, we are and must be unified in a peace-filled relationship. Scripture tells us that we are all one people made in the image of God and have unity of mind, sympathy, brotherly love, a tender heart, and a humble mind. It goes on to tell us that just as the body is one and has many members, all of the members of the body, though many, are one body. We too must act as one within our communities for the betterment of all. So let us open our hearts to God today, asking Him to come into our midst, for He has said that when one or two are gathered, He is there. Let us invite Him into our lives to prosper our plans and good intentions. 1 Timothy tells us, "First of all, then, I urge that supplications, prayers, intercessions, and thanksgiving be made for all people, for kings and all who are in high positions, that we may lead a peaceful and quiet life, godly and dignified in every way. This is good and it is pleasing in the sight of God our Saviour, who desires all people to be saved and to come to the knowledge of the truth. So as you meet together today, May you give God thanks for your communities, encouraging them to embrace our differences, to live and work together in harmony. As agents of the council and our communities, we pray that God will grant you discernment, understanding, and the will to make good decisions, and a desire to work together to create better environments in which our communities can thrive. As the recently installed mayor, let us ask God to guide Mayor Salim's steps, strengthen her resolve, and equip her to serve all peoples of Luton, to support all cultures, and bring peace and harmony to our town. She cannot do this alone, so we offer her our support today to put Luton back on the map as a beautiful, positive, inclusive town with thriving communities. Amen.
Please be seated. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Council. Before we begin, would members please sit in their allocated seats, silence their mobile phones, stand up when proposing and seconding, switch microphones on to speak and off immediately afterwards. If there is an emergency, turn left out of the chamber, follow the green emergency exit sign to the main town hall and assemble in St George's Square. Please note, it is planned to live stream this meeting to the public, but recent IT issues mean that this may prevent the function from operating correctly this evening. Any members of the public present are entitled to take photographs, film, audio record and report on the business held in public, but must not act in a disruptive manner. If they do, they may be asked to leave. The first item of business is to receive the minutes of the annual meeting of the Council held on the 21st of May, as set out on pages 5 to 27. Please note that on page 10 of the minutes, the membership of the STP Joint Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee should read Councillor Ambiya and not Councillor Aslam Khan. Subject to that amendment, do all members agree the minutes as a correct record? Thank you.
Madam Mayor, we have a number of apologies this evening, and that is from Councillor Fry, Councillor Marshall, Councillor Petts and Councillor Steer.
Thank you for the apologies. Are there any? So we have Mayor's announcements now. Okay. Members, please note that voting will be by exception today rather than calling out each member's name to record their vote. I will ask members to indicate if they wish to vote against a motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was asked to give apologies for Councillor Ali if he wasn't able to make it this evening, and I'm acting in his place this evening as the leader of the Lib Dems.
Thank you. So members, please note that voting will be by exception this evening. Rather than calling out each member's name to record their vote, I will ask members to indicate if they wish to vote against a motion. If no member votes against it, I will declare the item has been carried. The outcome will not be recorded in the minutes unless 6 members of the council indicate that they wish for this to happen in accordance with Standing Order 21.2. I have one announcement. I'd like to remind members that the Knife Angel, which is a 27-foot sculpture made of over 100,000 seized knives, is coming to St George's Square on Saturday, the 3rd of August, and will be on display in Luton throughout August. It's a powerful memorial to lives that have tragically been lost to knife crime, and a powerful statement deterring and highlighting the tragedy of knife crime. I invite the Director of Public Health, Sally Cartwright, to present the annual Public Health Report for 2024.
Thank you. I think the slides are about to be shared, so just pause for a second. So while the slides are just coming up, I'll just introduce the item, which is my first slide, but I'll just do that before they're up as we're working that through. So just as a reminder that every year the Director of Public Health has a statutory requirement to produce an annual public health report. And the aim of the report is to be an independent public health report looking at population health and wellbeing needs. So it can be about a specific issue to shine a light on a particular issue and drive forward action, or to highlight some key activity that's been underway. But it's a statutory requirement and it's independent. This year, those of you that were here at this point last year will remember that the report had a focus on health inequalities across the borough. This year continues its focus on health inequalities, and I made the decision to focus on the Health Equity Town journey. So to have a look at progress so far, to renew the baselines that we looked at in the initial report, to highlight high-level measures that we'll be using throughout the work, and also to launch an additional annual public health report that I will continue to use as a second part to the report, showing the breadth and reach of some of the public health programmes and initiatives that we have across the borough. And the aim is to continue to galvanise action across the system on health inequalities. Thank you. So just as an overview, just as a reminder around why health equity is so important and what do we mean by a marmot town. So in 2022, Luton became a marmot town. Hopefully you're familiar with that, but we have started to say a health equity town instead of a marmot town, because I think from evaluation and work that we've been doing, that's more meaningful and is more accessible for people. So we do still use marmot town, but kind of interchangeably. So we do tend to use health equity town now. But just as a reminder, health inequalities are unfair and avoidable differences in health across communities and between different groups within society. They can affect life expectancy and illnesses that people experience and the care that's open to them. So Michael Marmot is a very experienced professor in health inequalities research and policy. And he, through a lifetime of work, has developed these 8 Marmot principles, which are in these boxes here, which I won't read out, but you can see. And in 2022, we started working with Sir Michael Marmot's team at UCL, and we published a report that went through those 8 principles and gave recommendations, did some analysis and gave recommendations across those 8 principles and across some key focused areas to work on and to deliver across becoming a marmot town. So the aim of this report is to do a refresh of where we've got to since that report and to highlight how we'll be continuing to take this forward. So the graphs on the next pages give further updates to the data that was presented in the original report. It hasn't updated all of the graphs, but it's given some key highlights of information to show progress or where we still need to do lots of work. And the aim is on an annual basis to review those data and see some progress. So these graphs were included in the original report, and we've just added in the next year's data. There is a lag on this data, so it's still not 2024 data, just so that you're aware. And I know that you can't see the years on the bottom, but the full report that these slides are from will be circulated after the meeting, so you'll be able to delve into the information in a bit more detail. But as you can see, life expectancy in both males and females is going in the wrong direction, and that is true nationally and compared to our similar areas. So that's Slough on the graph, which is a similar area to Luton in terms of population demographics. So it's a similar trajectory, but still, as you can see, absolutely not in the way that we would want it to be going. So a decrease in life expectancy for both males and females. So this graph shows under 75 mortality from all causes considered preventable, and again, not going in the right direction. So you can see there that this has increased since the last set of data. So this is now showing 2020, 2022 data, and that has increased. But as you can see across those bars, that is the same for lots of our similar areas that we compare to. And actually the same for England in terms of the trajectory, but we are higher for that statistic compared to England and compared to the east of England, which is at the top. So again, not going in the right direction and lots more work we need to do in this space. This graph is around low birth weight, which is a risk factor for problems later in life, and we would want to see obviously lower numbers of low birth weight in term babies, which we are seeing a decline, which is good news. So that one's looking better. So a bit more of a positive picture, but again, we are higher for that than England and the east of England and for lots of our nearest neighbours. So although the trajectory is right, it's still much higher than we would want it to be. This one is again another positive direction of travel. So children achieving a good level of development at the end of reception, so showing that they will hopefully go on to do well in their education. And a big improvement between 21-22 to 22-23, but again lower than lots of our comparator areas. And this is a really important one for us because we've been not where we should be in terms of obesity and overweight in year 6 children. So we have seen a slight decrease, which is good news, but we're still far above where we want to be and higher than the England average. First entrance into the justice system, we've had a decrease between 21 and 22, which is positive. And we do well compared to England and east of England for that one. And then the next one is hospital admissions due to self-harm, which again is positive. We've seen a decrease in that statistic between 21 and 22. And we are actually lower than the England and east of England average there now, which is positive. And this is the last graph of this type that I'm just going to show, and this is our smoking prevalence. And we have seen an increase in our smoking prevalence according to this data, but it does come with some quite big caveats around it's quite a small sample size, so the confidence intervals are quite wide, so it should be treated with caution. But we are doing a lot of work around smoking cessation and smoking prevalence. We've got a new tobacco strategy, and obviously with the new smoke-free generation policy initiatives and additional funding, we're hoping that we will start to see that really shift. And then in the longer report, you'll see some narrative around these, but these are just some of the maps, trying to update on the maps that we had in the annual public health report last year. So that one on the left, the green and red one, you'll have seen many times before. And unfortunately, we can't, although it looks very old because it's from 2019, unfortunately, there hasn't been any updates to that data yet. So we can't update that. But what we have been able to do is show this additional map on the right, which is households below the destitution threshold. So those are really, really deprived households. So you can see where that concentration is and the high prevalence of that across the middle of the borough particularly. And then the bottom one is benefit The bottom one is benefit claimants. So you can just see that changing picture and the increase across that same middle section. Because you will see a lot of these issues that are part of the determinants of poor health will be the sort of same pattern across the same places and interlink between housing, deprivation, employment, etc. So that was some of the data that was presented in the original Marmot report. And there were many recommendations that were made in the report around activity across the system. So not just delivered by the health system, not just delivered by public health, but across the whole system. And this was some initial mapping that we did when we got the initial report. I'm not expecting you to be able to read the detail, but it just shows the process that we went through to say all of the recommendations that were made were at the outside layer of this circle. And we were just looking at what work is already underway that we can hang that recommendation on and influence it further to have greater impact on health inequalities. So you can't see the detail of it in the way this is presented, but some of the things in the middle there around the middle layer are strategies and programs that are in place already. So things like the Fairness Task Force, things like the employment skills strategy. So it just kind of shows how it all is interlinked across various pieces of work across the system. So since the report was launched over the last 18 months, we've been doing a lot of work across the system thinking about how the findings are understood by partners and making sure that there's a shared understanding of the importance of all partners in delivering this ambition, and thinking about the role of the building blocks of health across health equity and how that is embedded across everybody's work. So we've done a lot of communication activity since the launch of the report to communicate the findings and to further develop work plans. So we've held lunch and learn sessions, workshops, and we had a big one-year-on conference back in December, showcasing progress and launching the key measures that we'll be looking at on an annual basis to show progress against the Health Equity Town ambition. We've also been working with an agency called the Frameworks Institute, who work with the Health Foundation around how you communicate health messaging and the building blocks of health and framing issues around health so that you can have a greater influence. So we've been launching some training sessions that we've had open to lots of people across the system to attend, so we can all be talking the same language around some of these issues. We've got a quarterly newsletter, and we've got a repository of case studies that show evidence of best practice. And we've got a microsite that shows the progress and shares information on what we're doing. And we've also launched a Health Equity Town prize. So we had 3 winners of the prize last year. So small pilot projects which are tackling a form of health inequalities and are tied into one of the Marmot recommendations. So these are the 3 projects, and we will be showcasing progress against those in our next annual conference. So we launched them in the December conference, and we'll be doing some showcasing of the progress in those projects later this year. So we've also done a big piece of work around evaluation and monitoring. So we had some public health registrars do some key evaluation work, and the aim of that was to understand the impact around health inequalities, to develop the set of measures, and through understanding the impact through talking to stakeholders, to also be at the same time activating the system to make sure that people understood it and that they were engaged, and reinforcing the priorities and the direction of travel. So there was 3 aims of that evaluation piece of work. And we've published that as part of an LGA case study, and also as a full report. We're about to publish it with the Institute of Health Equity to be on their site, so everybody can see the progress against that report. And there were some key recommendations from that evaluation, which I'm not going to read out, but they're in the main report when you see it tomorrow, but around how we continue to maintain the momentum on this journey. So how we continue to have the right governance, how we ensure that everybody's engaged and that people understand their levers and influence. We think about the key priority areas of work and carry on developing work in those areas. That we particularly focus on tackling the 7th Marmot principle around tackling discrimination and structural racism, and we continue to develop our comms and engagement plans. Next slide, please. So that we also have the monitoring framework that I will go on to in a minute, that we use logic models to continue to develop the work streams where we've got small projects that are needed to maintain action against the recommendations, and we have a really clear work plan. So we have some indicators, and I'm not expecting you to be able to read that, but it's copy and pasted from the full report, but just to really highlight that we have some core Health Equity Town measures that we will look at on an annual basis. They're not things that shift overnight, they're long-term ambitions, and we will continue to look at these as our call to action for why we need to make a change, and hopefully within the next 2 or 3 years we'll start to see these shifting. So the top one is life expectancy, which takes a long time to shift and is never the most up-to-date data because there's a lag on being able to publish that data. But there's things in there around education, employment, housing that, as I said, aren't directly health, but are influences of health that we want to see shifting, and that we know that will then impact on life expectancy and health outcomes. And then that's just the last set, and there's ones in there around access to green space, cycling, walking, physical activity and obesity as well. But it would be really great if when you see the full report you can have a look at those and have that understanding of what those measures are that we will continue to look at. And they are also aligned to what we are looking at as part of the population wellbeing strategy. So there are subsets of what's in our wider population wellbeing strategy that we will look on an annual basis. So our priority areas in the report, in the original report, and that we continue to focus on are these. So net zero and health, business skills, employment and health, children and young people and health, and housing and health. And the report just gives an update across these areas around what work we've had underway to date and what our next steps are. So I'll just quickly whiz through some of those and then share what the plans are going forward. So when we first did the report, net zero and health wasn't actually a subgroup at the time of the initial report, whereas the other ones were, where we were looking at what are the key issues and what do we need to really drive forward. Net zero and health wasn't at that time, but has since become a key priority around that overlap between net zero and health and how we can influence the system more around health equity. So these are some of the actions around improving the built environment through the local plan, working in partnership on the ICS Green Plan, and broaden engagement with businesses to reduce carbon footprint. Next slide, please. We have a Marmot workstream around business employment and skills and health. So obviously there's lots of work already around the employment skills strategy and lots of work around employment, but this is around thinking about where we can influence health and health inequalities through some of this work. So our key partner is East London Foundation Trust, our mental health provider, and they are also working with UCL and are a Marmot Trust, so trying to really embed the Marmot principles in all the work that they do. So they're really key as a partner in this work, and we've been working with them to develop a passport to employment for mental health service users, and we will continue to work on that going forward. And we're also working with them, just as an aside, not as part of this work stream, but on this a piece of work around healthy, wealthy families, where they work in collaboration with partners for families coming into family hubs, is what we're going to try and do around getting better advice and support around finances as part of their offer. So it's been evaluated well in Newham, and we're hoping to roll out the same here. So there's just some other things there. Sorry, just go back one slide. Just some other things there that we are taking forward that I won't go through in detail, but you can see there around businesses and employment. Next slide. So children and young people, we've been doing a lot of work trying to think about embedding a quality improvement methodology. So looking at driver diagrams and change ideas to really influence health inequalities through children and young people. And a lot of the work around our Family Hubs programme is part of that, around our health equity journey and thinking about the Flying Start offer and further developing the universal approach to early years development and thinking about school readiness across that piece. We've as part of this piece of work, we've got an enterprise coordinator, so it's looking at increasing opportunities for those that are vulnerable and disadvantaged, and then helping remove barriers and creating opportunities for employment in later life. So those are some of the key pieces of work through that, but we will continue to develop them in the SHOE survey, which is our school health and education survey. Will be helping inform our future actions in that work stream. And then the last work stream is housing. So that we've been doing lots of work in the housing work stream, looking at the findings of the Healthy Estate Strategy and taking that forward, the findings of the tenant survey, and thinking about how we can use those findings to influence health inequalities even more and have some positive impacts. And through the Core 20+5 funding, we've continued to work on the Warm Healthy Homes project to proactively identify and take action around private rented homes with poor energy efficiency. So there's lots more work coming down the track in that work stream, as you can see in those bullets there. So over the coming year, we will continue to use the key measures to track impact, and we need to showcase smaller projects that are part of this journey that will have a build up to have an impact on those longer term outcomes. So it's really important, because the longer term outcomes are big and long term, that the smaller projects that we need to keep track of and keep monitoring and keep part of the journey build up to impact on those, and we need to keep those as part of the journey. So that's really important to us, and that we have an annual event that brings together the activity across the system and we review the progress that's being made. We're still working on our governance and how we influence across the system. So we've got that in a better place now, but there's always more work to do, and we keep people on the journey with us on this. We've got our monitoring framework that I mentioned about, that's aligned to the 2040 framework. And we continue to build on the subgroups and develop the work plans to enable change across the next year and beyond. We are also developing a toolkit to help partners think about how they embed these principles across their work, and we'll be working with Frameworks Institute and Health Foundation as part of that as well, around language and influencing change. We'll continue to have the newsletter to keep people on the journey and have the annual event. So this is about that communicating and keeping people on the journey with us rather than the specifics of the work. But I think it's really important so we don't lose momentum on this work. So that's the Health Equity Town report. I'm just going to quickly go through the part B of the annual public health report that's new this year, which is just around our public health commission services and our impact. So as I said, this part of the report aims to show the impact and effectiveness of the range of public health work programmes and gives an evidence base to help influence future work. And the thinking behind this is that a lot of our services, some of the in-year progress within these services is quite processy. It's about numbers being seen and outputs rather than outcomes, but because they will all build up to have an impact on those outcomes, I just want to make sure that it's really visible, that people can see how many people we're reaching through some of this work and how impactful that is, even though the end impact of life expectancy, for example, might not be affected as yet, but there is a lot of work going on that we need to be able to showcase and communicate clearly to partners across the system. So total wellbeing service includes our stop smoking service, social prescribing, weight management, and some additional public health programmes at the moment, including NHS health checks, outreach work. So across the whole programme of work, 35% of people using the services are from the most deprived areas compared to 30% of the population. So that's really positive that we're reaching the right people through the services. Since 2019, when we started the service, nearly 4,000 people have quit smoking using the stop smoking services. And social prescribing has had nearly 8,000 referrals since the service first started in 2018. So that's just some snippets of the work there. There's more detail in the other bubbles there, but I won't read them all out. But a key one as well is that through those that have attended social prescribing, they've reported an 88% reduction in GP attendance and a 97% reduction in emergency department visits, which is really positive. And we're doing a lot of work around what that service looks like going forward and how we make sure it's reaching the right people. So when I do this next year, we'll have even better stats, hopefully. NHS Health Checks is a statutory service provided by, commissioned by Public Health. And since being established 10 years ago, there's been nearly 80,000 health checks that have been offered in Luton, which is a huge number. And then just looking at physical activity, we've been doing some additional physical activity outreach since we had our Talk, Listen, Change research, and there's been over 1,000 attendances at those outreach services. So reached a lot of people. Sorry, I thought I had a figure in there about those that were new to services, but I haven't included it. So on to the next slide. So for our drug and alcohol services, slightly out of date figure now, but we had over 1,200 people in treatment services in August last year. So the service sees a lot of people and has a really great reach across Luton. And our 0 to 19 service, which is the health visiting service, sees the new birth visits within 20 days, sees 90% of all babies within 20 days, which is over 3,000 babies in last year, which is a massive number. Sexual health services, sorry, on to the next slide. And there is, obviously, you will have this all in front of you once you see the papers, so you can go through this at your leisure. But sexual health services, for example, had over 5,000 online STI tests last year, which is a big number. And through lots of our oral health outreach work last year, we've distributed 14,000 toothbrushes and toothpaste packs, which we've got really poor oral health in our under fives, so it's really important that we're getting toothbrushes and toothpaste with supervised brushing out to people in the community. So that's really positive. Family hubs, as you know, have opened, and we have seen 15 outreach sites now delivering family hub services across the town, which is great. And a holiday activity and food programme has had 67 camps across the town in summer in our most deprived areas, with 22,000 places for young people, which is really positive. Just some action since we launched our Talk, Listen, Change research community engagement project. So we've done quite a lot of work around mental health, physical activity, engagement events, Gypsy Roma traveller outreach, and working with our anchor institutions around cultural competence and how they embed some of the principles of Talk, Listen, Change in their work. And we've also launched our walking maps since the report was published. I don't need to talk about health equity sound delivery because I've talked about that already. And then our cancer connectors, who just recently won one of the awards at the Lex Awards, have done, they will have done more now because this is slightly out of date, but had 14 awareness raising events and listening events, and have been feeding back information to GP practices around barriers to access to services. And then lastly, our TB Find and Treat, which is around TB testing in our most vulnerable population, so our homeless, substance misuse prisoners and vulnerable migrants. We've been doing that on a 6-monthly basis since 2017 and has tested nearly 600 high-risk individuals and identified 41 cases of TB, which doesn't sound a lot probably, but it's really positive because that's really vulnerable and really vulnerable members of the community and prevents onward infection and transmission. So that's really positive. So I will stop there and open up to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. Does any member have any questions? Jackie?
Yes, Sally. Thank you for the report. Can I just ask, was there any reason, was it sent to us? Because I seem to have missed, that's a lot of detail
Yeah.
for us to take in tonight. So is there a reason, if it was sent to us and I missed it, I apologise. And if it wasn't sent to us, is there some reason why it was not sent to us? Because if that I am correct and it wasn't sent to us, there's no way I can drill in, ask quality questions on the report.
Sure, it wasn't sent. You'll be getting it tomorrow. And I'm not really sure why it wasn't sent, because I think it's just how we've done it previously, but I take that on board, and in future years I will send it in advance.
Okay, so in future, can you make sure that it is sent before such a report is presented to us? Because the data was really, I couldn't read it. So is that possible through the chair, that this doesn't happen again?
Indeed, Jackie.
Thank you.
Thank you. May I remind members to stand when they're speaking? Thank you. So we've got Aslan Khan next.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Stand, Aslan, please.
Jackie did. Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm really pleased to see social prescription working, as well as family hubs. As you know, I was a pioneer for both of those initiatives. While social prescription is doing well, I'm quite concerned that family hubs are not serving their purposes yet. What I want to know is how many people have you engaged? Because the purpose of the family hubs was wraparound support for those people who need it the most, and get people into employment, get people to have better choices of diet and give them the support they need. And what I'm hearing is there's very little activity in those wards, because the whole point was to target that to those postcodes where there's greatest poverty and there's greatest mortality rates. Can you explain why there's delay on ineffectiveness?
So family hubs are relatively new, and the locations that they've been set up in, so it's not, as you're aware, not all about physical locations. It is about, some of them are outreach and satellite and online presence and a network of services. But the locations that have been chosen are based on deprivation. So we have looked at maps very carefully, but also based on what is available, because there's certain criteria that need to be in place around the actual estate, that, you know, the location that's chosen in terms of space and accessibility and all of those other factors. So that's some of the process that we went through in terms of choosing locations currently, but there are other options that are still on the table that we could look at going forward, and conversations are being had around. I haven't got figures around how many people are engaged, but I know that obviously we only launched this year, so it is new, and there are lots of people that are engaging in the services. We've just launched our digital, the website and the app, and people are engaging with that in the services. So I haven't got all the details around how many people are engaged, but I wouldn't say that there's a delay or there's any particular problems with family hubs. And I think what might be helpful is a further update with some detail around 6 months into the launch of the service. How many people are we seeing? How's it going? What's the demographics of those people? So I think we can look at that as we go forward.
Yeah, this program is very, very important. It's costing about £5 million. And we know poverty is one of the main drivers for those inequalities. If we don't get this right, there'll be an opportunity missed. And it's been 10 years since we've launched 2040 Vision. Instead of narrowing the gap, it's growing wider and wider. And that's why it is very, very important that we monitor and we make sure that we're targeting those right people. And I would appreciate a report onto this: how many people, what postcodes, and what is the impact and outcome. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Mahmood Hussain.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, thank you. It's a very comprehensive report. And can I ask you two questions, really? One of them is which is the one initiative that you think has made a major impact in terms of the children's obesity, and in terms of the adults, the number of initiatives we have done in the past few years, which in terms of the life expectancy between the male and female had improved. Can you give me those figures, please? And if we did have a report given to the Health and Social Care Review Group, this SAM report, we did ask, I think it was a comprehensive and it was a full report, and it was sent not that long ago, and it was also copied to the members as well. So rather than just scrutinizing here, I think we have another platform where we can scrutinize.
I'm sorry, I struggled to hear the questions, I'm afraid. I heard the first one, which is around what's working around childhood obesity. Is that correct?
Yes, please.
So it's a difficult one, childhood obesity. So what we see in childhood obesity is that I didn't show the reception data. So we are beginning to see a downward trend in reception. And even we're doing well compared to the national average at the moment in reception. But in year 6, we're seeing a slight downward trend, but we're still substantially above the England average. And that trend is the same across the country, that the reception is doing okay. And then as children get older, the overweight and obesity starts to creep up. And a lot of the factors around childhood obesity are national, not just local, what we're doing locally, but we still can have an impact locally. So we're just refreshing our healthy weights plans. And we had a healthy weight summit recently where we looked at lots of factors around childhood obesity and adult obesity. And we're doing a lot more work in early years settings in schools, and thinking about how can we do different work in schools. So we're doing cook and eat sessions in schools to really try and engage children, young people, to then engage their parents and families. We're linking into family hubs and the offer in family hubs around the food environment. We're doing work around we've had conversations in other forums around the Hot Food Takeaways Challenge, and we're looking at what influence we can have on that. We've also got physical activity strategy, which underpins some of that work as well, and looking at access to green space and physical activity offer in schools and increasing sport participation. So the challenge with obesity and healthy weight is that it's whole system work. It's not just one factor that will make a difference. It's all of those smaller factors that will build up. And some of those are national and some of those we can really influence locally. So it's difficult to say what's the one thing that is starting to make a difference, but I'm hoping that we are starting to make inroads in that now. And what was the other question? Sorry.
My second question really was in terms of the life expectancy that had been improving between male and female. Are we still on the same track, or is there any difference now to in the last 5 years? Have you got any of those figures? Are you any aware of that at all?
Did you hear that, Sally?
No, apologies.
So it's the difference between male and female life expectancy and whether that gap is closing. Because
Okay.
there has been quite a substantial difference between the two in the past.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not closing at the moment, and both of them are, as you saw in the graphs, declining. So there is a lot more work to do in that space. And I think that's one of those high-level measures that everybody's work and all of the work that I've talked about will slowly start to make a difference on, and again, national drivers of that as well. But health inequalities and deprivation is hugely important for making a difference there.
Okay, Councillor Roach.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just got a couple of points really. One is around about TB screening. You're probably aware in Luton we have some hospitals where we have highly complex individuals with drug abuse and alcohol abuse, and they have 24-hour care. I'm told by these people, these organisations, sometimes it's very difficult to get them to TB screening. And the question I was asked is maybe are we able to be a bit more mobile and sometimes go on site with these organisations where they think they're able to get more people through the screening because they're there and they can get them through, rather than say, can you go to the town centre or we'll take you to the town centre, wherever you may be, and we get you screened. So I just wonder if you can take that back and see if that's possible. The other point really is more around you're working with schools. I'm a governor at Woodlands Special Needs School, and sometimes I find myself having to bring the council into 24 vision for them. In some areas, I just wonder if you're working with these special needs schools in health equalities and all the things that we're talking about here, and your work with schools. Thank you.
Thank you. On the TB outreach, so obviously we have that 6-monthly outreach TB testing, which I can take back around the location and whether there's more we can do there. And around the working with schools, yes, special needs schools are part of the work that we would do around, particularly around some of the obesity work streams and some of the other health in schools work, absolutely. Particularly one of the key areas actually working in schools around health inequalities around oral health. So that's a particular area that we are linking into around distribution of brushes and supervised toothbrushing and all of that.
Yeah, Councillor Hanif. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, so my question it's regarding cancer. So having lost my brother recently, I'm curious to know what is being done in the borough about, in terms of gathering data, looking at gender at-risk groups, and particularly plans to address prevalence in certain sections of the community, because we hear some communities are more affected than others disproportionately, but what's being done? And again, it will be helpful to have data so we as members can help support other parts of the council, whether it be yourselves and other departments in addressing these inequalities. So I'll be curious to see what plans you have in terms of speeding up testing referrals, perhaps looking at adjusting some of those age brackets, because more under 40s or under 50s are being testing positive for cancer. So what plans are in place in order to deal with this? Thank you.
Thank you. So we know in Luton that we have comparatively poor cancer outcomes, and there is particular focused work on that at the moment. So across the ICB, led by the ICB, there's a whole work stream on cancer, but there's a particular focus on Luton in that. So we have a whole Luton Cancer Outcomes programme of work led by the ICB, but my colleague Chimeme that's here actually is a key link to that as well, because the cancer community connectors as part of that are really important for us around understanding what the barriers are in Luton and looking at cultural issues, particular population groups that might have poorer outcomes and why that might be, and why there might be poorer access for GPs in certain groups, and really understanding some of those issues and feeding them back in so that the pathways might be able to change, or that GPs might be able to adapt how they work with different community groups. So there's a whole programme of work on that which we're trying to look at, and there's key outcome measures as part of that programme that we're hoping to see shifting, and we've got some good data on that. But we're also at the moment trying to relook at that data and look at do a bit more of a deep dive around certain population groups. So we're doing a cancer needs assessment at the moment that we will hopefully publish in a few months. September, I'm being told. So it's underway at the moment, which will really be able to deep dive into some of those demographics.
Thank you. Okay, so we next have Councillor Wynne.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Perhaps I should start by saying I'm a great fan of the work that's being done on public health in the borough. I think that it's an example of excellent work. Before I move on to a very specific question, I personally have not seen this annual report before this meeting, and I would have appreciated seeing it beforehand, and I think that would have improved members' understanding. The specific question is, have I missed it, or is there no reference to the issues surrounding dental health in the borough?
Thank you. And again, apologies that the report wasn't circulated previously, but you will get it after this meeting. So the only reference to oral health in the report was just around some of the work that public health has been leading around oral health outreach for children and young people, because that's the work that we've been leading on, and that was part of my impact report. So we've been doing some work around supervised toothbrushing and oral health pop-ups to try and help access to dentistry for families that haven't been registered during the pandemic. So we've done a lot of work on that in the last year. A lot of the dental work is led by the ICB, and they have the contract with dentists. So there's only so much from the public health perspective that we're able to do, but where we can, we have been working collaboratively, and we're leading an oral health action plan. It's not the topic of this report, so I haven't gone into a lot of detail on it, but we do recognise it's an issue that we need to be tackling as a system.
Thank you. We now have Councillor Javeria Hussain.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Officer, for your report. I shall be brief as quick as I can with my questions. The first one is just a bit of reassurance. I'm sure you're doing this anyway, but at the beginning of your report, you mentioned about cross-working between the different strands. So obviously, equity and health have an impact on employment, have an impact on children's education and so on. So I just want a bit of reassurance that you, when you do prepare this report, that you actually seek input from the various different departments. I'm sure you're doing this, but it'd be good to know on that point. My second question was, with regards to health inequalities, what will be perhaps really useful going forward? As colleagues have already noted that the report is pretty comprehensive. So what will be really, really useful is perhaps when you do present this next year, if you can give us two examples, like 2 case studies of 2 wards where perhaps our strategies have made a difference, or the work that we're kind of doing. So it helps, particularly all of us colleagues, to understand the difference that it's making, because I completely appreciate that these are live strategies. It's not set in stone, and we're having to constantly reevaluate and review what our set policies and strategies are. So that will be really useful, because I'm a huge fan of case studies, as you know. So it'll be really useful to know that what you're going to be doing around that. Thank you.
Thank you. So in answer to the first point, yes, we're engaged with lots of people across the council that are delivering on some of these work areas. So I think the challenge is that health inequalities are influenced by lots of other people's work. And where we've got work streams around employment and businesses, for example, we're not duplicating the work that's happening elsewhere around that, but it's about trying to think about health or inequalities or the most vulnerable in some of that work a bit more, or where there was a Marmot recommendation, how can we plug that into the employment and skills strategy and think about that in a bit of a different way. So trying to have those conversations rather than duplicate or do something separate. So absolutely. And at the very beginning, when we were preparing the original Health Equity Town Marmot reports, we had steering groups and working groups that had people from across the council from different areas of work on those. So we had a housing working group that were trying to unpick some of the issues and where we could make recommendations, and similar for the other work streams. So absolutely, people are engaged across the work. Yes, and I completely agree about case studies, which is why I was trying to make the point, and what we've been thinking about a lot around this Health Equity Town journey is that we've got these high level measures that we're trying to look at over the course of years, and to make sure that we are seeing an impact on a shorter term scale. We want to see case studies, we want to see small projects that are showing an impact. So the Health Equity Town, the Health Equity Prize, those 3 small projects, we'll be able to see what difference have they been made on a small scale that then build up to impact on those bigger long-term outcomes. So I think those Health Equity Town Prize projects will be able to show the impact that they've had, and we're going to be doing an event on those quite soon, and there'll be other smaller projects that we can start to show an impact on as well, like the enterprise coordinator and the impact that they've had, for example.
The last question from yourself, Councillor Gervais.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As part of 2040 Living Well, Aging Well, why is there no mention of organ donation, and what are we doing to promote that? Because that's vital, could help people who are living unwell, could either save their life or help them extend their life. I haven't seen anything in organ donation, and especially as we had a motion last year.
Thank you. Yes, it is an important issue, and I haven't included everything that's happening in this report. So the first part of the report is around Health Equity Town work, and that hasn't come into those work streams particularly, but it's not to say that we haven't been linking into work in that area. And again, the public health impact bit hasn't talked about that in great detail, but there is just a last bit on the last slide that talks about the stem cell donor recruitment and the Know Your Blood Type work that we were doing with the University of Bedfordshire and the Luton Swab Week, trying to get stem cell donors from people from ethnically diverse backgrounds. So we have been working in that area, but it's often not led by us, but we will support other people's campaigns or work programs in that space. And we're looking at in our Good Business Charter whether we can think about that as part of that as well, going forward, and some other places that we might be trying to do some more work in that space. So it's not in the report, but we are talking about that.
Okay, thank you, Sally. But stem cell is, thank you for mentioning that, but stem cell is organ donation is a lot more there. Can you just give a quick overview of what we've done since the motion? Have we done any work to promote organ donation in our communities since the motion?
We in public health are supporting others in this area, but we don't lead a lot around it. And I do recognise that stem cell is different, but that's some of the work that we have been engaged in, particularly working with the Anti Nolan Trust. So we're supporting the University of Bedfordshire on Organ Donation Week in September, and also at the Luton blood donor site. But most of that work isn't led by public health, but we will support, and we do recognise it is a key area of health inequality. So we can look at doing more around that as we go forward.
Hey, thank you, Javed, and thank you very much for presenting, Sally. You're welcome to stay, but feel free to leave if you choose to now. And we're now going to move on to section 106, disclosures.
All members of the council have been circulated with a list of items before the council this evening, which fall within the ambit of section 106 of the Local Government and Finance Act 1992. Any member affected should disclose the fact and refrain from voting from any questions relating to those items. No section 106 disclosures have been received. Disclosures of interest. Again, no disclosures of interest have been received.
And I call upon Councillor Aslam Khan, who will ask a question of Councillor James Taylor. Aslam.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can the portfolio holder tell us how much did the BBC Big Weekend cost the council and its partner Luton Rising, and was it value for money?
Will Councillor James Taylor please respond?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I thank the member opposite for his question. The executive approved a sum of £350,000. That was UK SPF grant funded, which we received a government approval to allocate to this venture. And Luton Rising provided sponsorship of £150,000, and there has been no impact on the general fund. We welcomed over 105,000 people over 3 days, and the event put Luton in a global spotlight, with the BBC stating it was their most remarkable event on record out of the 21 they've previously hosted. The BBC also reported 100 million views on the BBC's own social media post. The festival generated 5.7 million stream requests on iPlayer and BBC Sounds, and with a significant uplift in Luton and the surrounding areas, and TV content which reached over 3 million viewers. Our own social media platforms hit well over 1 million viewings across our social media, and we were inundated with hundreds of positive comments across Luton Council, Step Forward Luton and Luton Rising social media. For our money, we could never have dreamed of achieving such reach that we did. Over 4 months of positive coverage on a national radio station, local news stories, campaigns, and even our own song from Chris Martin. We just received some of the economic impact headlines, and the estimates are it generated over £6.7 million of economic impact, including local spend, which is over 10 times of the cost that we put in. 94% of attendees agree it was great to see Luton host an event of this scale, and this increased to 98% when amongst local respondents. Across the weekend, I spoke to many attendees who were delighted by the event and felt that it went off flawlessly, with many stating it made them proud of their town, its heritage, and demonstrated its vibrancy. And there has been huge interest from both businesses and the community to host large music events in the future. Once we've received the full economic impact report back, we will start to explore the opportunities with commercial and event organisers, as we will want any event to be delivered at no cost to the local taxpayer. Finally, it is also important to note that throughout the whole weekend, only 8 noise complaints were received and only 13 arrests. For an event of this scale, that is absolutely incredible, but this was down to the strong partnership formed between the BBC, Festival Republic, and the work our own LBC staff putting into planning a safe and high quality event. Recognition of which was given to them last week, where they awarded a Dare to Dream Award at the Luton Excellence Awards. So in short, I think the big weekend was a tremendous economic, cultural and community event, which came at no cost to the Luton taxpayer. So yes, I think value for money was achieved.
Yep. Supplementary, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Madam Mayor. Yeah, it's all well and good having those claps, but you heard earlier, there are people dying in this town because of poverty. What I want to know is how much of that money is going to go to those residents who need it the most. Could you give us a breakdown of those people who attended, and then those businesses which were allowed to operate there, and how is that Luton pound was spent in Luton, kept in Luton? I would like to understand the journey before I come back again, Madam.
So, as I say, there was no impact on the general fund budget. None of this money was taken from somewhere else to fund this event. You know that. I'm pretty sure you know that, and you're being disingenuous by asking for that. This was £350,000 of UK SPF funding, which is designed to promote Luton as a town and a place to do business, which I think we achieved by hosting this fabulous event, as we see economic impact of over £6 million. Of that, I think about 5.1 million came from outside the town, in terms of influx into the town, with an additional 1.6 million pounds of spend from people that live within Luton. Also, there was a huge uptick in the hotel trade. Many of those people that you've discussed that were in economic need, they will work in those trades, they will work in hospitality industries, they'll work at restaurants, they'll work at bars. So I think the figures speak for themselves. £500,000 worth of funding, £6.7 million of economic impact.
Yeah, no, figures are figures. But when you talk about the journey, and I asked you about the journey, people came on the trains to Stockwood Park and from their cars went to the event. How's that money coming to Luton? It went to BBC Pocket, it went to Thameslink. There were no businesses from those poor areas, and those people living in Luton did not even get an opportunity to get a ticket. Second biggest population in Luton, hang on a minute, second biggest population in Luton is of South Asian community.
Aslam, do you have a new question?
Yeah, I'm asking this question. Asking this question. Second biggest population in Luton is from South Asian community. What was the music offer for that community which lives in poverty and dying earlier? And how many businesses from that area got the opportunity?
So just to answer his question, we are not responsible for what businesses were allowed inside that. That is the BBC's event, that is Festival Republic, in charge of that. They encourage local businesses to tender. I certainly saw a couple of local businesses within there. But in terms of tickets, I'm pretty sure he is aware that I think about 30% of tickets were ring-fenced for local residents. Again, we have no impact on who the headliners were, what acts there were, but I'm pretty sure there was a very diverse crowd in there. I didn't see him there myself, but I'm sure he would have enjoyed the event. And across our town, people came together, engendered a sense of civic pride, proud of their town, proud of their community, proud of that diversity. We had local acts on the BBC introducing stage. Miles Smith, who is currently in the top 10, helped launch him to a national audience as well. So as again, I think the impact of this event has been tremendous for our town.
Madam Mayor, one last one, Madam Mayor.
Is it a new question?
It's a new question.
Could you make it short?
Yes. Now, you talked about promoting Luton and value for money. How many times the co-sponsors were mentioned? Luton Airport and Luton Council. Not once. How's that value for money? How's that promoting Luton and Luton brand?
I don't know if he's aware, if the BBC is not a commercial organisation. So they don't really do advertising, but they played our Step Forward Luton branded events. We had the Luton Rising Festival Makers greeting everyone on the way to the event. They were a tremendous success. People commented how friendly they were. Luton Rising also sponsored some tickets that were given out to local children to go to local young people to go to the event. It was value for money. People were happy with it. I don't know what he's trying to angle for and get at. It was a huge success for our town. I think we just have to look at the numbers. Over 98% of people were happy with the event and would like to see further ones in our town again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, James. We'll move on to Jackie Burnett, Councillor Jackie Burnett.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Councillor Aslam Khan, for the question. And thank you very much, James, for the response. James, Councillor Taylor, how soon will you have the economic outcome in order to answer Councillor Khan? Because I know my children born in Luton attended that event. One moved out of Luton, came back to Luton to attend the event. And there has not been one bad comment I have heard from Luton residents. And when you was on this side, Councillor Khan, we fought to keep
Jackie,
culture. So please, Councillor Taylor, can you give us an indication when we're gonna have the full breakdown? Because I think that will really help answer Councillor Khan's question. Thank you, Councillor Taylor. I look forward to the response.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. Sorry, this was a question for portfolio holder. Is this now a debate?
No.
So, yeah, if it's not a debate, could it just be between the portfolio holder and the original proposer of the question? Thank you.
Okay, we note what you've said, and that is absolutely correct.
No, I understand. I'm asking the portfolio. No? Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, okay.
Okay, I do apologise. Jackie, I apologise. I should not have allowed you to take the floor. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, we'll move on then. And if there are no further supplementaries, then we will move on to Councillor Franks. You have a question of Councillor Javed Hussain.
I have indeed, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the opportunity to ask it. A growing number of Victorian and Edwardian houses in Luton are being covered in external insulation, which converts buildings of attractive Luton grey bricks into what look more like ugly concrete blocks. What, please, is the council doing to control this vandalism of Luton's heritage?
I invite yourself, Councillor Javed Hussain, to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I actually welcome this question from Councillor Franks because it's such an important question and it's an important issue now. The planning team are aware of all the installation grants that were going on, the installation work that's going on, unless it's in a conservation area or a listed building, they're using permitted rights to do that. So we have, that's the grey area. And as Councillor Francis highlight this, now with the new government, we will ask them to clear up this grey area, because the contracts that the people who are doing these installation works are predominantly targeting vulnerable residents who don't know that they need planning, even though we tell on our website, but they're not likely to go on the website. Let's be honest. The legislation needs to change to guidance to the installers, because it's a government scheme. It's not a Luton Borough Council scheme, to say to them that they need to make these certain checks. If it's a building of a certain type, you can't do it or not. At the moment, they are allowed to do it. And often they are telling our residents, the vulnerable residents, who have a right to have a warm house, because a Victorian house is like to be cold and drafty, that you don't need planning permission. So we will take that back, and we will write to the government to say you need to clear up this grey area, because they're using permitted development rights.
If I may follow that up, Madam Mayor.
Indeed.
I thank Councillor Hussain for telling us all of the things we already know. I was rather hoping he was going to tell us something we don't know. For example, which alternative forms of insulation is the council explaining to potential applicants for this grant?
Yeah, I would like to refer that to Councillor Shaw.
As the councillor knows, yes you can, as the councillor knows, there is only 3 people on our own list, and we actually specify what should be going on there. Anyone that wants to watch it this week, there's a programme on Look East this week about some of the cowboys, that's the only way you can describe them, what are operating in this market at the moment. Bad workmanship, pressurising people to sign up, all sorts of stuff's going on. And it's been this programme that's going on Look East and on national telly, we've been part of for the last 2 months because of our concerns about the type of insulation. One of the problems is we don't find out. We've asked the energy companies, as Councillor Wynne knows, through the Climate Change Board on numerous occasions, to find a way to give us a list of the properties what are being done. But there's one easy answer, and we're saying that on telly, we're saying it on Look East, and the Panorama programme, what's being done about it, is give every council in the country 1.5% of those grants. If we get 1.5% of the grant for every one of those properties, we can employ building control officers to ensure the work's being done properly, the insulation's the right type, that it's not going to be falling off the walls in 3-4 years' time. I can take you to an house on Badley Road now where they haven't even put a cap around the chimney, so the water's just going to get down behind it. In a couple of years' time, that'll be falling off the wall. But it's not one of the ones done by our people, our nominees, because they can apply, the same surveyor will do your grant application, will do your energy chart, work for the firm what's actually doing the work, and come back and inspect that work, and then submit the application to the energy companies to be paid. So they're looking at the energy themselves, they're looking at their own work, they're inspecting their own work, and they're submitting the applications. The only ones we've got direct control over are the ones what are on our list, what meet all our requirements about training, standard of work and everything else. And I'll be quite open with you, we have kicked some people off the list because they haven't done it to the standard we expect. But that is probably only 1/5 of the properties what are being done in the town. The rest are being done by how I've just described. And we don't even find out about some of them for 6 to 9 months because there's no duty on the energy company to actually inform us of which properties they paid out grants for. We've actually, part of the programme, what's going out on Look East, is asking the government to take action to force those energy companies to give us 1.5% or 2%, or at least inform us of where the work's being done. We can't afford for our building control officers would do absolutely nothing else at all with the amount what's being done in this town if they just went around doing the inspections. We need to get it right. I feel sorry for some of the people. We've had one case where someone got charged because there weren't enough money in the grant. The plumbers tried to charge £100 for putting outside tap out what was leaking and then denied they'd even done it. we kicked them off our list. But that's the kind of people we're dealing with at the moment. We need that panorama and the Look East programme to be successful, to put pressure on the government. All we want is 1.5% of the grant to employ more building control officers to go around and inspect all that work. That's where we are at the moment. And we're not sure what type of insulation. I tell you what we do find, our cleansing crews having to clean up all the rubbish afterwards on some of the roads are finding all sorts, chip rock, layer cake, everything is being found in the roads afterwards because they don't even clean up after themselves properly. We need to take action. We as a group are taking action. We're putting pressure on the government and we're putting it on through national media now as well to try and get the action taken. What we've been asking for the Climate Change Board for the last 18 months.
One more go, Madam Mayor, if you don't mind. Councillor Hussain said the insulation is permitted development. Is it still permitted development when the cladding in effect is a front extension? So a house built on the back edge of the pavement is then overhanging the pavement by a few millimetres. Is that still permitted development?
No, as Rex, you all know, that'll be part of enforcement. If the installer's gone over, that isn't permitted development and they've gone over. The installer should not go overhang at all.
Yeah. Is Councillor Hussain saying he's going to get a written response to that question? Because it would be rather interesting.
I can provide you a written answer.
Thank you, Councillor Franks. Thank you, Councillor Javed Hussain. I'm afraid it was a correct point of order that I'm not allowed to take other questions apart from those who've submitted questions. Okay, so moving on, I would like to call upon Councillor Jackie Burnett to present the report of the Bedfordshire Fire Rescue Authority as set out on pages 28 to 30. Jackie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The report is before colleagues. In front of you on pages 28 to 30. I'm happy to take any questions on the report if there are any. No? Okay, thank you. Thank you, colleagues. Back to Madam Mayor.
Is the motion seconded? Thank you. Questions? Okay. Does the council receive the report? With regard to agenda item 8, there are no written questions this evening for the Bedfordshire Fire and Rescue Authority. The next item is agenda item 9, the annual report of the Executive Leader on decisions made by the Executive under special urgency. Would Councillor Simmons please move the recommendation?
Madam Mayor, as explained by yourself, this is a report that comes on an annual basis for Council to note the special urgency reports that have been dealt with by the Executive. I therefore ask Council to note the report.
Is the motion seconded? Are there any questions? Are there any amendments? Does any member wish to speak to the motion? The motion is before the council. Does any member vote against the proposal? The motion is carried. The next item is a report on the decision of the local adjudication panel held on the 9th of May 2024, which is set out in full on pages 34 to 37 of the agenda for this meeting. I call upon Councillor Nichols to move the recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move the recommendation set out in paragraph 2 on page 33.
Thank you. Is the motion seconded? Are there any questions? Oh, Councillor Franks.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I wonder if Councillor Nichols would please let us know what action the Labour Party has taken or is intending to take following this decision of the Council's adjudication panel that Councillor Shaw was lying in his statement at the November 23 Council meeting.
Councillor Amy Nichols, if you'd respond.
This is a report of Standards Board and not of the Labour Party whip, so I'm sure that's not really a question for me.
Well, thank you for nothing, I suppose, is the answer to that. Does Councillor Nichols agree with me that Luton residents are entitled to be told whether or not the Labour Party accepts that it's okay for its members to tell lies in council meetings, and what action it will take if it does not think it's okay?
I still don't think that's a question for me because this is a report of the Standards Board. If the leader of the Labour group would like to reply, she can do so, but this is a report of the Standards Board.
I thought Councillor Nichols was supposed to be chair of the Standards Committee. I would have thought she'd have been a bit more up to date with what they're up to than that, but there you go. One more try to see if we can get something out of this. Prime Minister Mr Starmer has made it clear his aim is for the new government to restore people's faith and trust in politicians. What contribution has Councillor Shaw's lies made to this ambition, please?
I think we're not going to respond to that. I think that is that Mark? I think that I wouldn't want that to be responded to. The statement is clearly outlined within the document pack, and you've just, I think Amy has made it clear several times that she is here presenting a report of the Standards Committee. Amy, unless you want to add something to that? Okay. So if there are no further questions, Councillor Franks, we will move on.
No.
Right. Is the motion seconded? Sorry. Yeah. Okay. We've got the questions. Are there any amendments? No. Okay. Does any member wish to speak to this motion? Right. I think we've got yourself first. If you want to go ahead, Councillor Shaw, and then.
It was very nice that the committee, which by the way is made up of a person that had already complained about me and had been found cleared in the past, and another opposition councillor. Two opposition councillors, well, got no time for me and I ain't got a lot of time for them. Anyway, but the committee said that I shouldn't take training on the Nolan Principles. I've learnt an awful lot about the Nolan Principles. What they mean is that I can't say that they're the most useless opposition we've ever had. What I can say is that they're the most inept opposition we've ever had. And in my view, they are fooling the people of Luton or attempting to. So what we'll do, we'll have a little look. This is David Frank supporting the licensing, or this is Focus. I've got to make sure I'm 100% correct. In May this year, the council faced another legal challenge, decided to abandon the scheme and refund the licence fees it had collected. So now they'll have another try. I wonder if the Liberals have put in their latest Focus that we won the last court case. And the landlords have now gone to appeal, but I think they'll forget to tell the people of Luton that, because they're just trying to score a few cheap political points, which is the only thing they're good at. They're not good at anything else. But what it did say in the report, so let's get it clear, concise, and read direct from the report. They considered care to inspect to others and not bully or harass any person. The panel found the comments were not made to disrespect or harass others, but were made to gain political advantage. I'm sorry, I'm a politician and they're the opposition. I try and get political advantage over them anytime, anywhere, any place I possibly can. But you know the stupid bit about this? This is what gets me angry. I didn't take part in it, by the way. I decided to ignore what Frank's and that's what I'm up to. I ignored it completely. But it cost about £5,000. And one of the independent members of the panel at the first meeting even turned around and said, correct me if I get this wrong, you've got officers, what were there? This is a waste of council time. And that come from an independent member. But Councillor Franks, in his normal way, trying to score some political points, that's all he's doing. And if you the officers are here, I'll repeat it just to make sure you get it right, David, for your next complaint, that the independent member said, this is a waste of councillor time. And what the Liberals have done is managed to waste about £5,000 of this council's money on this case, when it says no bullying, no harassment or anything else. That's her finding, by the way. No one else's. That's her finding. They voted that no bullying, no harassment has taken place. But we're going to have to look at cuts to social services and everything else over the next few months. This is a person, when we're cutting about 5-10 grand out of the budget, we'll say to him, maybe how many more complaints you're going to make this year. But again, the Nolan principles, we're taking a very in-depth training course on them. I actually say, I'm not allowed to say how useless you are. I've got to say how inept you are. And that's the only thing I'm allowed to say now. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, so Councillor Yaqub Hanif.
Yeah, sorry, just a bit of a comeback to what Councillor Frank said about Prime Minister Starmer. Well, Prime Minister Starmer wasn't a Prime Minister when this incident happened, but as we know now, we're luckily and thankfully we've got a Labour government, and as Councillor Shaw has just said, he's taken the training, and I'm sure all of our Labour members here are firm believers and upholders of the Nolan principles, engaging in public life and public leadership, and it's shocking to see that £5,000 to £10,000 has been spent on going through this complaint, and then we've got meetings coming up about savings or cuts that we have to make. So and I think it's we as members should act in the best interest of the town. I've got to make sure that council resources and finance are not used in this way. And if these sort of things happen, we should find other ways of coming to some sort of resolution or reconciliation. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. The motion is before the council. Sorry. Councillor Wynne, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I have to say that it would cause me to be rather disappointed if Councillor Shaw didn't make some of his statements, because it does cause a great deal of laughter at times. Perhaps he should bear in mind the quote that it's sometimes better to keep your mouth shut and appear a fool rather than open your mouth and prove it. I think that, quite honestly, everything that's going on here is paying lip service to the real issue. The real issue is that there were statements made about my group that were untrue. They have since been repeated, and I'll give you an example, in an interview at Inspire FM. So we are paying lip service to it. Nothing has changed. I will believe that there is something going to be done when I see it happen, not when I hear the words.
Point of order under Standing Order 17.27, Madam Mayor. What Councillor Wynne says is quite true, but it's what I believe. And under the Nolan principles, if I believe it, then it's quite correct to say it. And that's what I said. And I believe that the Liberals are so useless that they give us no support at all. They're saying they did, but that what I've just read out to you, strange enough, from the back, of a Liberal focus. And if anyone wants to say it's here, they're just attacking us for not getting it through, but no admission that this time we've got it through, and it's the landlords what have gone for an appeal against the decision where we were all awarded all our costs in court, but now it's off to an appeal court. So what I said is, if I honestly believe it, then it's correct.
Franks.
I think the first thing I need to do, Madam Mayor, is to point out that Councillor Shaw, in his explanation of the proceedings at the first hearing, which was the assessment panel, that he is being somewhat, shall we say, reserved with the actuality of the situation. The independent
Madam Mayor,
member,
on the 7.2,
independent
you've
member,
got no choice to sit down now, David. I've got up on the standing order.
Please, and let him finish.
Right, on the standing order 17.27, I would like to say the monitoring officer here, the chair of the panel's here, they all heard the comment, and on 17.27, I've got quite the right to do it. Everyone heard that comment being made. The only ones what didn't hear that comment being made, it seems, are Councillor Franks and Councillor Raslin. The actual words were, "This is a complete and utter waste of time," was said by the person from the monitoring independent.
I heard those remarks at the assessment panel. They were made by the independent member before he had seen any of the evidence. That no evidence of any kind was presented at the assessment panel. That all came at the second meeting, which was the adjudication panel. At the adjudication panel, the same independent member said, and I quote, where is it? "I have been provided with all of the submissions provided by the complainant and the monitoring officer's report concerning this matter. It is my view that the complaint is valid and should be upheld." That's what the same independent member said when he had actually seen the evidence. So partial reporting often conceals a great deal more than it actually reveals. Now then, in my 40 years serving on this council, I have seen some actions and heard some statements which have made me proud to be a member. I have also witnessed some which left me feeling ashamed to be any part of the organisation. I've heard members telling lies in this council chamber, and it's made me very, very angry. Now, for the first time, we are presented with actual evidence. Evidence which has been carefully considered by an adjudication panel, which, as Councillor Shaw forgot to mention, included a Labour Party councillor. I forgot to mention that, of course. The decision notice reported here demonstrates that the decision was agreed unanimously by all of the members of the panel, including the Labour councillor who chaired the meeting. And the decision was that Councillor Shaw told lies at the November 2023 meeting, and that he must have known that what he was saying was untrue. The Labour response this evening is nothing short of disgraceful, and it's hard to see how the people of Luton can see it as anything other than an attempt to sweep Councillor Shaw's behaviour under the carpet and hope nobody notices. Finally, Madam Mayor, I need to make my personal position clear. I understand, I really do understand, why we are not supposed to call each other liars in council debates. However, when I hear another member telling lies, which I believe they know to be lies, I absolutely reserve the right to call that member a liar.
Councillor Mahmood Hussain.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I mean, this really shows the quality of the opposition. People of Luton, I mean, a real positive opposition would be discussing the important issues of this town. And here we are spending 40 or so minutes, 45 minutes, on something where the Standards Board had already made a decision. And it has come to us as a matter of information, not for a debate, not trying to change it, and not trying to change the principle. Every member has signed up to Nolan Principle, and they understand it very well. Every member had done the training on standards, and they do understand it. But here is how trivial that the opposition in this chamber is. I am just as disgraced with the behavior of the opposition today as I would be if somebody had said that was not right. And I think they ought to think more seriously on the people who have given them the privilege to be in this chamber and to discuss the real issues to the people of Luton. And I think it's a pretty disgraceful behavior and it's complete insult to the people of Luton.
Councillor Wynne. So, Councillor Wynne, I believe you've already spoken to the motion. So I think it's just once that you get to speak to the motion. Okay. Right. So we're going to move on unless somebody. Okay, Councillor Moore.
I find it interesting that Councillor Hussain has considered that people telling untruths in any mode of government or council is a trivial matter, and I would consider it to be rather more serious than that, that any elected or nominated official in any government or council chamber would say untruths, and to call that a trivial matter, I would think would be interesting to members of the public, certainly. And to say that we have been discussing this for 40 minutes, when I can tell you for a fact we haven't, because we didn't get the opening report finished until 40 minutes ago, is a statement that he is again just not. It just shows that side of the bench that may be thinking about what they are saying within the council chamber, which I think is a very important matter, maybe isn't considered as important on that side of the bench as it is on this side of the bench.
Councillor Alia Khan.
Thank you. It seems that now that the report that was supposed to be delivered and motioned through and accepted, it's become a case of tit for tat. So I would suggest we move on from this very swiftly, because we're not going to be here all evening discussing this, and I'd appreciate if Madam Mayor would move on from this.
Indeed, the report is in the pack. So the motion is before council. Does any member vote against the proposal? The motion is carried. The next item is a report on a revision to the council senior management structure by the creation of a new post of Director of Digital Data and Technology. I call upon Councillor Simmons to move the recommendations.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report asks council to agree to the creation of an additional seat. Oh, sorry, I'm reading the wrong report. I apologise. To amend the Appendix A to the Part A of the Council's Constitution, which is the senior management structure, by the deletion of the post of Service Director Information Technology, and the inclusion of a new post of Director of Digital Data and Technology, and by the adding in an addition of information governance to the list of the functions which will be performed by the post holder. And it also instructs the monitoring officer to make the necessary arrangements to the Constitution. And I would ask members to agree this evening, please.
Thank you. Is the motion seconded?
Motion seconded, Madam Mayor.
Are there any questions? Any amendments? Does any member wish to speak to the motion? The motion is before the council. Does any member vote against the motion? The motion is carried. The next item is a proposal to create an additional seat on the Overview and Scrutiny Board. I call upon Councillor Simmons to move the recommendations.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The report before council is easily explanatory, and members will understand the process here. There was an error and an oversight at the AGM, and this is putting that right. So I ask members to agree to the additional seat and nominate Gulen Abbas to take up that seat. Thank you.
Is the motion seconded?
Seconded, Madam Mayor.
Are there any questions? Are there any amendments? Does any member wish to speak to the motion? Sorry. Is that for amendments? Okay, so Councillor Wynne, you may speak to the motion.
I'm speaking, I guess, as both today's deputy leader of the group, but also as chair of Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Let me just start off with a simple bit. I understand entirely the monitoring officer's report, and I accept that what is being proposed is in accordance with the Constitution. Right, so having got that through first. There are, however, other issues. We at full council vote for the fact that scrutiny will be politically independent within this council, which is a principle I think all members of this council have understood and accept. The situation is that although it's in accordance with the Constitution, this will end up not with the other scrutiny committees, but with OSB, Overview and Scrutiny Board. It will end up with the Labour group having an overall majority and the ability to be able to overrule any form of opposition or opposing that is done by OSB, even if the entirety, every single member of the opposition disagrees with the report that's been put in front of them. That exact situation happened in the last Overview and Scrutiny Board. We ended up with a report coming to OSB which was refused by OSB on my casting vote as chair of OSB. Had this new situation applied, then that would have gone through despite every single member of the opposition not accepting the report. Now, that means that although we are obeying the Constitution, we are not actually obeying what we've all jointly agreed at full council, which is to have scrutiny be non-political. It doesn't work. And if I take it just a little bit further, then I'm afraid that something is very wrong at the moment with the way that scrutiny is operating. I had the good fortune to also substitute for Councillor Ali at yesterday's executive. And at yesterday's executive, I was very grateful for the leader of the council's commitment to doing an inquiry on this matter. And I understand that's already underway, so thank you for that, Hazel. However, we ended up in a situation where Overview and Scrutiny Board had refused a report, which was then put through unamended to executive. The senior officer concerned was at both meetings, OSP and executive. And I think that means that something is fundamentally wrong with scrutiny. Whether or not it's a matter of the constitution needs to be changed, or whether or not it's a different way of running scrutiny, I don't know. And I would willingly talk to any member of this council, especially to the monitoring officer, because of his knowledge on the subject. But I do think that we actually need to be very careful that we don't, by our actions, ruin even more the whole scrutiny process, which is a jewel in the crown of this authority.
Councillor Simmons, would you like to respond?
Yes. This is a correction. I don't know where you're coming from, David, at all on this. I accept the issue of the no reference that you raised at executive yesterday. We as an executive took that up, and that is being investigated, as you said. But I don't know where you're getting the idea that this is a change. This is the constitution we've been working to. All we've done with this report is put it right when it was out of sync. And so this is the way that we've all signed up to the constitution, that you will have signed up to. So you knew that scrutiny was going to be run this way, with the majority members from the majority members of the council. So I don't quite know where you're coming from on this. And I think if you've got an issue about scrutiny, you should take it with Amjad, and we'll take it through to the leaders, and we'll talk about the issues you've got concern about at there. This is not for this report. This report is a very clear report on correcting an error in our constitution. So it's not the right place to raise your concerns around scrutiny. And I would suggest you talk to Amjad and take it a different place.
Thank you. Councillor Steve Stevens.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Whilst I understand it is legitimate, there are questions about why we have been through so many OSB board meetings where it hasn't come up before. And if I'm looking back to the situation, it appears to me that the OSB has been working relatively well over the past year, and in fact, more than the past year. And if I can quote something back from Thomas Bartram Lance, who was an advisor to Jimmy Carter during the 1976 successful campaign, is if it's not broke, don't fix it. It has been working pretty well. Generally, I would say, very well. I know that the Liberal Democrat group do earnestly read the agendas, do ask lots of questions. I would say to Hazel, I would honestly counsel you to ensure that your group are reading the agendas and are fully taking part in the proceeding, and not sitting there spending all their time on the telephone or doing other work on their laptops, because that is not the process of a proper scrutiny committee. And I think my colleagues would agree that is what happens at the scrutiny board. If we want the scrutiny board to work well, then we need to make sure that we all engage in the process. It's not all really necessarily a political debate that takes part, because what we are doing is scrutinizing policies before they go through to the executive. We did that on that last occasion, and it just strikes many people that what actually took place in putting right this situation now was slightly a case of, we didn't agree with the way that you're playing, so we're taking the ball back home with us. So kind of really taking some kind of revenge, even though it is illegitimate, and I would not, Hazel, I wouldn't say it's not legitimate. It is the right process, but we do need to make sure that the OSB is working effectively. Thank you, Madam.
If you'd like to respond, Hazel.
As I said to David, I don't quite know where you lot are coming from on this. This is the Constitution. We're putting the Constitution you all signed up to correct, because it was incorrect and has been incorrect, you're quite right, for a few months. So we're putting it right, because that's our Constitution that we all signed up to. So I don't understand what all this fuss is about. As I said, if you've got issues around scrutiny or complaints, it's not to be raised on this report. Put them through the proper system. This report is about a correction to our Constitution, not about issues you may have with scrutiny. Put them through your leader to the leaders' meetings and we can discuss them. Don't let's raise spurious questions about what you say has happened in previous meetings. If you've got an issue of complaint about anything that's happening of that meeting, there is a process to follow, not to bring it up on a legitimate report here that corrects the Constitution. Do things through the proper system. That's all I ask you. So I really don't know what all this fuss has been about.
Right, so Jackie Bennett, Councillor Jackie Bennett.
This is just a question to Madam Mayor, Deputy Chief Executive Monitoring Officer. On the report, paragraph 3, it says, following former Councillor Ghulam Javid's decision in February 2023. Have I got something? Is that correct? That's what I need to, because it's like.
It's actually Councillor Aslam.
It appears to be correct.
The report, the public paper. That's my question is, this is a public paper. Is it correct?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I just want to check. And it was February 2023?
No.
Okay, that's all I'm asking. I'm just asking the question. Thank you.
It's correct, thank you. So we'll move on to Councillor Yaqub Hanif.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, so to use another anecdote, this is like a storm in the teacup from the opposition. So Councillor Wynne says about impartiality, casting vote. I was in that meeting, and that was a very political casting vote. So please do not lecture us on impartiality. When I was sat in that meeting, and it was quite clear, the direction, that meeting was going in, and the feelings towards policy set by the Labour group. So that was a very political decision taken by the chair. And finally, as Hazel has said, not once but twice, it's in the Constitution. We, the majority Labour group have been elected here by the public. We're here, and it's been in the Constitution for many years. So, again, please, we should not be taking up council time. And sorry, the reason, Madam Mayor, the reason I felt to speak up is about Councillor Wynn's comment about impartiality. That may have been the case, but my own experience tells me that otherwise. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you. Councillor Mahmood Hussain.
Madam Mayor, I did laugh at that because that proves my point, what I said earlier on. We're talking about trivial, when this is the most ridiculously trivial. We have agreed the Constitution very recently. If we want to amend the Constitution, there is a way we can do it. And we can do it through changing the Constitution. So please, impartiality, I haven't seen that. I've been on the board very recently, but I didn't see any impartiality. We agree on the consensus sometime. Some of the issues I backed you on the FRG, on all the others, and my colleagues, even though they were not in terms of political, were the right thing. Because we do that all the time, but you do want to make it political every time. If you make it political, then what do you expect us to do? When we sit in there, we sit quietly and let you do that? No, we will oppose that. Because scrutiny should never be used trying to do the political points. This is the chamber where we make political points, not at the scrutiny, and they're doing that all the time.
Okay, Councillor Tom Shaw.
Totally confused, Madam Mayor, because Councillor Stevens gets on his feet. He's what I was talking about earlier. Lazy Liberals, not knowing the rules. His exact words, tell me if I don't want to get anything wrong. So please tell me, did he say about Labour members not reading their reports? That's Councillor Stevens, I can't understand where you're coming from, or Councillor Wynne. Because if you don't agree with something, what's gone to the executive, I'll give you a bit of advice. Go and read the constitution of the council, because you've got what's called a calling facility, where you can call in those decisions. When we were in opposition, I used to make a point of calling in 2 or 3 decisions every single week. But you can do it. But it shows you who's the lazy ones. Ask what don't read the report. Or you, how long you been on the council now? You still haven't read the constitution of the council. You've got the right to call in decisions. Do what we used to do. I mean, there weren't a lot to call in when the Liberals and Tories were in charge. Very little to call in indeed. But we called some in to have a discussion. If you're not happy with what the report went up on Monday night, last night, you've got the right to call that in. I said, yes, some of your members, do your job as opposition councillors and go and read the constitution so you can see the tools, what we have given you to be able to undertake scrutiny. That's all I can say. Not us not reading them. You go and read the constitution. I got a copy.
Councillor James Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do have just a small point to help the members opposite. It's just a little matter of democracy. I think it's right that the council should reflect the results of the election. And if the members opposite want more seats, then they should try and win them at elections, or at least stand in every seat in the town. That might help them out.
Councillor Yaron Begum.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to point out something that Councillor Stevens was saying in terms of the conduct of the Labour group members, where we are using our devices. Now, we've signed up to be councillors, agreed? Yeah. So part of our vision is to go paperless. And as part of that, we need to use our devices. So when you see us with our laptops open, or you see us with our phones, it is because we are referring to the minutes and the paperwork on our phones. We cannot challenge you effectively or sufficiently if we are not allowed to use those. If you want us to carry on cutting down more trees, fair enough. We will go with whatever the majority vote is on that. But in answer to your comment is that we are using our devices, not because we are texting friends or family. We see them enough. We're here to do a job and we'd like to do it effectively. Thank you.
Councillor Alia Khan.
Thank you. The point I wanted to make has been raised by Councillor Yaron, so I just wanted to take this opportunity to bring Councillor Stevens and his fellow Lib Dem peers to bring them back into the 21st century and remind them we live in a digital age and we use our laptops and phones to do our work. Thank you.
Councillor Franks.
I'll start by saying quite clearly, I agree with Hazel. The whole point of this report is to put into practice something that was agreed by all 3 parties ages and ages ago, and which, due to oversight, wasn't dealt with at annual council. Now it is being dealt with. I can understand the points my colleagues are making about the way scrutiny is treated. There are genuine complaints about some of the ways scrutiny is treated, but this isn't one of them. Please, just let's get on with business.
Councillor Charmaine Isles.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Okay, what you've just said, Councillor Wynne, and what Councillor Stevens just said, I just wanted to say, I was going to say, but I'm still going to say it anyway. Making a statement to say that we are not reading our papers, you have to have evidence to say that. So I just want it to be clear. When somebody makes a statement, please, if you haven't got evidence, don't make statements like that. Okay? Please, do not make statements like that. Hold on. I haven't finished this yet. Hold on.
No, you cannot. You cannot.
Because, sorry, at the end of the day, I've been on the scrutiny committee ever since I was elected. Okay? And I've seen my colleagues, we read the papers and we pay a very active interest in what's going on. And we participate. And when things don't always go how we've expected or whatever, everybody's quite dignified and everybody's professional in what we do. So that's what we want to maintain, and that's what we maintain. And I feel that's what we project. So I just want that note. I just want to make that note, and I want it noted on the minutes. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Steve Moore.
A quick one to an earlier point that was raised. I believe when Councillor Stevens was referring to papers, he wasn't referring to physical papers, but the actual agenda item minutes. And obviously, I don't think he was meaning that he would rather the entire council went to full paper meetings again.
The motion is before the council. Does any member vote against the proposal? The motion is carried. I call upon Councillor Mahmood to present the Bedfordshire Police and Crime Panel Annual Activity Report 2023 to 2024 are set out on pages 41 to 52.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move the recommendation set out at paragraph 2 on page 41.
Motion seconded. Are there any questions? Does the council receive the report? Excellent. That concludes the business for this meeting. I thank you for your attendance.